Good evening and welcome to this November 4th, 2024 meeting of the Akron Public School Board. Thanks for joining us this evening. Roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Ms. Autry.
Present.
Ms. Hall.
Present.
Reverend Harrison.
Present.
Ms. Jackson is absent. Dr. Molnar.
Present.
Mrs. Sykes.
Present.
6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you very much. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, we're going to have the Buchtel CLC Air Force Junior ROTC Color Guard lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce Master Sergeant Albert DeSaro Jr. here with our Buchtel Junior ROTC this evening for a presentation.
Hi, thank you, ma'am. And on behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Ariano, the Senior Aerospace Science Instructor at Buchtel's Air Force JROTC, I again am Master Sergeant DeSaro. I brought kind of a cross-section of cadets with me this evening to just speak briefly on a couple accomplishments that AFJROTC has been able to earn just in the past 9 weeks since school started. So first and foremost, I'm not sure if everybody in the room or the board is aware, Air Force JROTC is a congressionally mandated Title X program. And annually, the 4 services, Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, inspect their JROTCs throughout the entire country and at the DoDEA schools that are overseas for Title X compliance, Title IX compliance, Department of Defense compliance, Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marine Corps compliance, and then obviously Akron Public Schools or district and then school board compliance. And so 2 Thursdays ago, the Air Force descended on Buchtel for their yearly evaluation, and after about 8 hours of hosting the Air Force, the Buchtel Air Force JROTC program came out with the highest rating that can possibly be given to a school, which was an exceed standards in all facets of compliance and policies and procedures. Thank you. And what you probably don't know is that's not attributed to what Lieutenant Colonel and I do. All right, so Lieutenant Colonel and I are figureheads in AFJROTC. We do the work that the adults must do. We spend money, we schedule buses for field trips, we put together syllabi for curriculum, and we teach the course. But the inspection and its success is attributed to the Cadet Corps. Because what the Air Force really wants to see is the Cadet Corps a student-led operation in all facets of compliance? And do they have established a chain of command? Are they following it? And are they making all of the decisions that are within their realm of control? And so the applause should be given to the students, not necessarily to me or Colonel Ariano. So I'd like you to thank the students. And passing these compliance inspections are important because with budget constraints, the 4 services are always looking at their short lists of units to close and put in other schools that can better either accommodate a unit or keep a unit that's robust throughout the country. And when we pass these inspections and these evaluations, it also, especially with high ratings, it leads to more funding, and that more funding can be spent on the students that we have in the Corps, and it leads to instructor recognition as far as Instructor of the Year, Instructor of the Region, and it's important that the instructors are recognized for the job that the cadets are doing and that the cadets are recognized for the job that they're doing. And so I'm going to allow the cadets to briefly speak about what it's like to have the Air Force descend on a unit and what they have to go through to prepare for it over a period of an entire grading period, when they also have academics and extracurriculars and sports that they're involved in, but somehow they got to juggle all those balls in the air and make it all work. So first up would be Cadet Major Delancia Brown. She's a fourth-year student. And then Cadet Captain Woods, she's a fourth-year student. Cadet Master Sergeant Humbert, who is a second-year student, and then her younger sister, who we drug into JROTC as a brand-new freshman this year. So you kind of get a perspective from a cross-section of cadets that have spent multiple years in the program and have achieved up through the ranks as they've been in the program for that length of time.
Hello, I am Cadet Major Delancia Brown. I am a fourth-year cadet and a senior at Bookdale COC. My position as of the year of 2024 and 2025 is Inspector General. So my role in the UEI was to lead cadet leadership through the unit self-assessment and check for compliance with the standards and report discrepancies back to our Cadet Corps Commander.
Hello, I'm Cadet Captain Woods. I am a fourth-year cadet at Bookdale CLC. My job in JROTC is the Deputy Commander. My job is to assist the Corps Commander on any aspects in the program. So basically, I take in charge of some meetings. I take in charge of the Corps Commander's absence. So if she's not here, then I take charge of the agenda on what we have to do.
Hi, I'm Cadet Master Sergeant Humbert. I'm a second-year cadet and a sophomore in high school. Currently, I'm just training for captain. During the BUI, I had to run 30-step for the first time with a bunch of first and second-year cadets. Honestly, JROTC is so great. I love being in here. It's like a fun little family thing. I was scared to be in it at first. It felt like I might get yelled at 24/7, but it's so great in there. I deeply recommend it to anyone. It's so good.
I'm Cadet Airman Humbert, her little sister. I'm a first-year cadet, and so far I like the experience there. I like the opportunities, the chance to do some type of leadership. And right now I'm in color guard, and I enjoy that too. I like being able to work along other side people and just synchronize. And I don't have a job as of right now, but I hope to have one.
Would anybody like to ask them any questions?
Any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Member Hall.
Thank you, Madam President. So do any of you plan on furthering your career in the armed forces?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. No?
I'm really thinking about it. It's moving towards that option. It's
Wonderful.
definitely one of my options.
Wonderful. Because, you can go to school for free.
Yeah.
Great jobs. You kind of pick where you want to work at. So it's an excellent opportunity. So pursue your dreams, and good luck to you, ladies.
Delancia Brown is being humble. Her goal is to attend a university that has an Air Force ROTC program because she wants to commission as a second lieutenant. So she says she's planning on it, but it's been in the works for almost 2 years, and I think she's probably going to see that dream come true.
Wonderful. I will just say one last thing. Thank you for speaking up for the children.
Oh, yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
of times our kids are shy and won't say it, but with people like you, to let them know their worth,
Sure.
we appreciate you for doing
Absolutely.
that. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Dr. Molnar?
Thank you. My question will be at the very end, but I actually got the pleasure to visit the students and meet our Cadet Major, Delancia Brown, on I think 2 Fridays ago, something like that. And so I actually was going to talk about this a little bit during my reflection. And since I always run out of my 3 minutes, I'm going to use some of the reflection I was going to talk about you guys here while you're here. I love everything that you said, and I'll second Member Hall's how you stand up for the students. They also have a student-led marketing plan, which has also been very successful to them. They've all been very humble. So I want to say some more things here. That I heard that we might be one of the only districts in the country with all 4 branches of the military represented through our ROTC programs, and so that's something that's really here to be proud of. But I really want to talk to our cadet major here, because I actually wrote a quote here that she told me that was so profound I was going to use it in my community reflection today, because when they were sharing on how they were empowered to lead the improvements for their program, they said, if we notice, this is a largely female-led corps. And they also, and when talking about leadership, they said, you know, they are empowered by the women in leadership around them. Their principal, their school principal is a female. And also, the quote I wrote down from you was, when referring to your leadership role and a strategic agent of change, this is my core. She said, I'm responsible for our successes and failures. When we fail, I take responsibility for repairing that failure. But when we succeed, it's because it is a collective success. And I just thought that was so mature in the words of a true leader. And if anyone wants to add or expand anything on that, I want to give a moment. But I wanted to repeat it because I really appreciated what you said.
I would like to add on that just briefly, if you permit me. So I also wanted to highlight the fact that, and this is for the community as well, community service is an enormous aspect of all JROTC programs, regardless of what their service affiliation is. And it's through the hard work and the dedication of these 4 young ladies, plus our entire cadet corps and Lieutenant Colonel Ariano, that we are consistently meeting or exceeding our community service numbers and giving back to the community of Akron that gives these children to us to educate. In the past 2 years, our unit has been awarded the Organizational Outstanding Unit Award for surpassing 750 community service hours in a school year. And if you don't think that's a lot, that is a lot of community service hours that 69 cadets are performing year in and year out. We are just under the threshold of that 850 mark to earn the Distinguished Unit Award. And it speaks volumes that, you know, not only are these students leading the Corps in the building, but they're also leading the Corps outside of the building. Anytime that we go off into the community in service dress, they are truly making a mark and showing the community that, you know, we're doing the right things, we're saying the right things, and again, we're giving back to the community for giving us and trusting their children to us to educate and become the future of the country as well. So I congratulate these 4 young ladies and the 69 cadets that we have on us earning that award 2 years in a row. It doesn't happen a lot, and so we are probably in that top 20% of exceed standards on unit evaluation inspection and garnering those awards year in and year out. So the congratulations goes to them and not me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other additional questions? Well, thank you again. Thank you for your leadership and your discipline, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And so the next item on our agenda is community and school reflections from our board members. Are there any reflections? Dr. Molnar?
Thank you, Madam President, and I might make my 3 minutes today now. So on October 25th, I did visit Bookdale CLC, which is a 612 middle school, high school building for some community members who are just joining us. And I saw so many wonderful things, like the girls here who imprinted on me, and not our future leaders, they are current leaders, and they inspired me. And there were rooms in there. Mrs. Rick's room was just filled with love and nurture, and I appreciated the visit. But I really want to focus on the benefits of our 612 buildings, because I think a lot of times we talk about the logistical benefits. Oh, we get to share a cafeteria, or this saves us money. But when I went to Bookdale, I got to see so many academic and student benefits to this shared space of a 612 building. And one of them that I was going to talk about was the ROTC with a student-led marketing plan. They talk to the middle school students, so that way when they come to become the freshmen, it doesn't have to be a mandatory freshman class. The students are electing to join, and when you elect to join and do something that you want to do, you're more likely to stick with it and enjoy it. But it's not just the ROTC. It also went for the band. I got to listen to band practice, middle school band practice. I had flashbacks from when I played the trumpet, but being able to start band at 6th grade has increased recruitment and the abilities of the high school students, because now they've been playing for longer and they have more time together, so the matriculation is better for band. And also the makerspace. I was so impressed by the amazing makerspace they had at Bookdale. They had painting and sewing, but especially the esports area, and talking to the esports instructor and librarian, it was a really great opportunity too, because there's the middle school esports team that then leads into the high school esports team, and I am an advocate of esports. You know, investing in esports not only has all the academic benefits of traditional sports, like engagement and problem solving, scholarship opportunities, but esports also offers opportunities for genuine inclusion, because unlike a lot of physical sports, esports has opportunities for students with different abilities to participate equally. So I really appreciated all those parts of our 612 building. And the esports team at Bookdale is a decorated team. This ROTC is a decorated team, one of the best, top in the state. We might have, best in the country. I hear that again as a goal, best in the country. And so it made me think, I wish we had something on our webpage where we could share as a district rankings and awards of various student groups. So what programs we have, which schools recently won, what awards, just a place we could go to say, look how great our kids are. I think that would be really nice for us to have, and I'm out of time.
Thank you, Dr. Molnar. Member Hall.
Thank you, Madam President. I just really want to put something out there. Saturday, November 9th, from 10 to 1, there will be a youth scholarship fair at the House of the Lord. There will be different engagements educating our community on how our kids can go after scholarships. And I know that's a big thing, because me personally, I didn't want any debt of my child going to school, so I sought out scholarships to make sure she went to school for free for her undergrad. So if you can attend, and by this being recorded, Saturday, November 9th, Youth Scholarship Fair at the House of the Lord, it will be very beneficial, as well as people and organizations who offer scholarships will be there too. So you can talk to them firsthand about how they can get that scholarship or when it will be out. And then also I attended a conference this past week, amazing conference, CUBE. Boy, they talked about you. But when I tell you this was very enlightening, it made me even more excited to be on this board. It talked about things that we already know, but a little bit more in depth about, like, the biggest blockages for our kids: food insecurity, financial literacy, technology, physical and mental health. And they also talked about how, the parents that don't know financial literacy, how that pushes off on your kids, as well as teachers and staff. If we're going through something as adults, sometimes we take that with us to work, to school, to home. And so they talked about starting programs for financial literacies for teachers and staff and administrations, because if they know, then they can better help the students. They also talked about grocery stores and schools, for the kids that leave on Friday, because sometimes this is the only meal that these kids get Monday through Friday. But having a grocery store in the school where the kids can go get food for Saturday and Sunday, just to make sure they eat, that was big. And then one more thing I'll touch on. It was so much, but I only touch on a few things. Talked about washer and dryers. Now, I know we have some washers and dryers in our high schools, and I know that the staff utilizes the washer and dryers to wash the kids' clothes. There's a gentleman, Akbar, that I saw maybe 2 years ago in the middle of the night. It was a series about, he started a laundromat in the school. He took a classroom and started a laundromat. So I started a community wash day at my job because of him, where we pay for kids to wash their clothes for free. But I would like to learn more about the washers and dryers in our school and how we can really tap into it for our kids to be able to go in and wash their clothes instead of waiting for the teachers to, be available to wash the kids' clothes. How can we open that up to the community and maybe getting some senior citizens that can come in and wash the clothes for the kids? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hall. Are there any other reflections? Member Harrison.
Madam President and Board and members of the community, Board Member Hall brings up a great point, and I want to remind us all tomorrow that we should be voting not simply because it is our right, but it is our responsibility for everyone to vote. Want to talk a little bit about some realities in the school. I got some information from Ms. Deborah Folk. Akron Public Schools feeds 14,500 kids lunch every day. Every day we feed 14,500 kids lunch. And every day we feed 9,000 kids breakfast. Every day. And every day we transport more than 13,000 kids. The school system, for many, is the safest place that these kids will ever be. The teachers in our schools will be some of the people who catch those learning disabilities early. The teachers will be some of the people who identify kids that might not be safe at home, kids that may need additional resources. The school has a levy tomorrow, and there's 20,000 reasons why we should support Akron Public Schools. There's 20,000 reasons, and 20,000 reasons look like you and they look like me. And the reality is, if my child is hungry, someone else's child is hungry. If my child needs help, someone else's child needs help. If my child is not safe, then no one's child is safe. So I would ask us to really look at the reasons why we should support Akron Public Schools. A lot of negative press, a lot of sometimes controversy. There's a lot of questions, and we should be questioned. As board members, as administrators, as staff, the people have a right to ask us questions because their children have a right to be educated. They have a right to be safe. And we are asking that you would trust us enough that we can work through any difference, keep your child safe, educate your child, feed your child, transport your child. And so tomorrow, I would ask everyone to think about those 20,000 reasons to say yes to Akron Public Schools.
Thank you, Reverend Harrison. Any other reflections? Mr. Alexander?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to echo what Pastor Harrison said about those 20,000 reasons that we are all here because we care about our kids. We know that our kids need us, and if we don't take care of our kids and make sure they're taken care of, nobody else will. And so they're going to be the kids who will be the teachers in the schools in the future. They're going to be the administrators. They're going to be the ones who are handling our bank accounts. They're going to be the ones who will be the medical professionals. And so we need all, they're going to be the lawyers. We need to make sure that we do everything that we can to ensure that every student that we have in this district gets what they need, and that is called equity, making sure every kid gets what they need while they're in our schools. And also, I want to say this here. Last week, Dr. Robinson did the state of the system. He did an outstanding job over at Garfield. It was outstanding. there were a lot of community members there. There were administration there. The energy there was just so good. I haven't seen the energy like that in a while here in Akron Public Schools, but the energy there, if we could take that energy and bottle it up and put it throughout the district, our district would be outstanding. We would overcome a lot of things that are going on in our district, and it would be very beneficial to our students. So I want to thank him, his staff, and everyone else who was involved with the state of the system, because it was very good. I mean, I enjoyed seeing the administrators and those individuals who were there smiling. That was outstanding, because we haven't really smiled in a while. But it was great to see everyone smiling and be there to support what we need as our school here in Akron Public Schools. So I hope that energy that was there will continue to permeate throughout the school district, in the schools, and with their staff and everyone, so that we can continue to do what we need to do for our students. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Any other reflections? So I'll just wrap it up by echoing the comments around those very important 20,000 plus reasons to support this district on tomorrow. Also echoing the amazing experience at the State of the Systems address last week. I was really proud to be a board member, seeing what we saw there. The work that went into that program was very evident. I love seeing the jazz band playing out in the hall, and the ROTC from Garfield doing the colors, and the ambassadors and all the soloists. And I enjoyed the fact that it was in the evening, because as far as I know, it's always been in the middle of the day. So to be able to share that with the actual folks who enjoy our district, who send their children to us, I think was a really good move. So kudos to all that were involved in putting that together. Also, before the program started, I was able to meet the amazing interpreters. You know, we often show up for these programs and we see the finished product, not really realizing all of these people working behind the scenes, making it happen and making it look all wonderful for us. So thank you for those interpreters, for making sure that all of our families were able to be engaged in that State of the System address. Also, since we last met, I was able to attend the Future Healthcare Leaders Youth Summit, where over 200 of our 11th graders who are interested in healthcare were able to attend. Hands-on experiences. They got to do sutures on a pig's foot. They got to do ultrasounds. They got to do blood draws. They got to do CPR. They got to do have conversations with healthcare professionals that look just like them. And so it was really an amazing experience. I want to shout out to Dr. Elodie. This is her brainchild. This program was formerly known as the Black Men in White Coats, but it's been expanded so that both, male and female can enjoy this opportunity. It was really exciting, especially for people like me who like gross stuff. So it was just cool experience. Also, since we last met, I had the opportunity to attend Akron Community Foundation's mental health panel, and our very own Zaya West and Troy Weiss represented students on that panel. I'm going to go over 3 minutes, just so you know. With everything that's recently happened at their school, they're students at Firestone, so they had the opportunity to share how they really feel about things and what's been happening, because we often hear from the adults, we often are reading in the papers, and they mentioned the fact that they were frankly tired of being questioned by the press. They wanted to hear more from the adults in the buildings around them. They did give our crisis team kudos for supporting them through that incident that happened. They really appreciated that, but they said they wanted more. They wanted some classroom or class meetings so that they can further talk about it. We have so many issues that come up, and then we just expect us to move on to the next thing, and we expect children to move on and get beyond it, but it's still in the forefront of their minds. One of the comments was that any one of us was one phone away from being that student, because in their minds, it was about a phone in their minds. They stated that they felt this actually unified them as a student body, but they were nervous, they were scared, but they said that something has to change. And so I think we really need to listen to our children as we're moving forward and looking at how we keep our schools safe. And I just want to thank those two for being really brave and taking a lot of questions from the audience and sharing how they truly felt. So I just think it's important that we know how our students feel as we're dealing with this. And so that concludes my community reflections at this time. So we do have a few requests to address the board. And first up is Dan Richards from Garfield. And as he's coming up, I will read our little preamble. Participants will not be permitted to speak on matters related to vendors, business matters, formal complaints, grievances, specific student or student records, personnel matters, and potential or pending legal matters. Participants must speak on matters related to the business of the board. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The board will not respond, but will assign through the superintendent the appropriate person for follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be before the board and everyone here present at the meeting this evening. My name is Dan Richards. I'm a counselor at Garfield, the Garfield CLC, for 28 years now in the APS, 17 years as a counselor. I've had the privilege of supporting the students and the families of the Akron Public Schools, and it is a privilege. Throughout most of my career, my colleagues and I have felt respected, knowing our district values the work we do and the services we provide for our students and for the community. But that sense of pride and belonging, it's been increasingly difficult to hold on to. Last week I had the opportunity and was glad to be present for the State of the Schools address, where I listened to a speech and heard many claims being made and many things said. I heard a continued insistence that this administration is not only pro-union, but very pro-union. I heard assurances that this administration works collaboratively with district employees and that labor contracts are being honored. With all due respect, and I must tell you those claims are simply not true in some instances. It has not been true for many of my colleagues, and now, unfortunately, it's also not true for APS school counselors. The administration's actions tell kind of a different story here, one that contradicts the narrative you've been presented with. Our labor rights are being eroded, our input disregarded, and our contract often undermined. It is time this board acknowledges what many of us are experiencing daily, an environment that does not uphold the cooperative, respectful relationship that Akron's educators deserve, an environment that threatens our jobs a little bit far too often. Before you tonight, less than 1 week after I heard that speech and only 1 day before you asked the public to trust that this district's leadership is transparent and honest with them, is a consent agenda which includes the hiring of a social worker. This professional, licensed, and certificated educator position has been designated as a non-union role by this administration. Now, however, you are being asked to ignore the expertise and commitment of those who have faithfully served in those roles and vote to supplant positions. The agenda before you recommends handing our counselor positions and our essential work over to non-union hires, threatening the jobs of dedicated employees who are currently doing very much of this exact same work. This action is not only disrespectful and dismissive of our roles, it also directly violates the contract and the rights within that agreement, an agreement you have all pledged to uphold. I urge you to consider the message this sends to those who have dedicated our lives to Akron students. Consider the message this sends to our students, families, and the Akron community. Our work and our relationships matter. Following agreements matters. Honesty matters. And of course, setting the right example for our students matters. And I thank you very kindly for your time this evening. Thank you, Madam President, and everyone present tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lisa Sims.
Good evening, board members. My name is Dr. Lisa Sims, and I am a school counselor at the 1040 Buchtel COC. My role as a school counselor and the work I do with my students is not just a job to me. It is a commitment and responsibility. My colleagues, many of whom are here with me tonight, and I take this work very seriously. We are dedicated to building the relationships that empower our students and families into providing support that contributes to their success and ultimately to the success of Akron Public Schools. Counselors are unwavering advocates for our students and families. Day in and day out, we provide critical support services that not only promote academic achievement, but also help students thrive emotionally and socially. We collaborate with service providers to ensure our students receive the mental health and academic resources they need. And we take pride in the trusted long-term relationships we build with our students and their families. These relationships are vital to their well-being, growth, and success. Today, I stand before you deeply concerned. I urge you to look beyond polished speeches and carefully crafted denials, to truly listen to those of us who have devoted years, decades even, to Akron schools. Listen to the truth. We are asking for a district that values all employees, honors its commitments, and works with us collaboratively rather than working to tear us down. Our students, families, and our community deserve nothing less. They deserve the transparency and honesty that is so often voiced in this room. The supplanting of educator jobs has got to stop. In the past few years, we have lost far so many seasoned and dedicated employees to other districts. Educators who leave Akron schools seeking fair treatment and respect for their voices. When educators feel valued, they stay. When they don't, they leave for places that honor their commitment and expertise. Supplanting my position or the positions of my colleagues with non-union employees is not only unjust and disrespectful, but it also violates the board's own agreements with its educators. It has created a toxic work environment for many of Akron's dedicated employees. Our work is grounded in experience, trust, honesty, and a deep understanding of communities we serve. Replacing us with non-union staff undermines that foundation and weakens the bonds we've built with our students and families over years in dedicated service. I urge you to honor the commitments that this board has made. When Akron educators can trust, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. N.J. Akbar.
Good evening, everyone. It is good to be back here again. I stand before you today as the co-chair of the Akron Urban League Young Professionals Advocacy Committee, and we are here. We're led by Lauren Marsh, who's here. We have several members here from the Akron Urban League Young Professionals, and we are standing here to say that as members of this organization who are ages 41 and under, many have kids in this district as early as a toddler, as the T word, a toddler as well as up to 15, have a vested interest in the success of this district. With that being said, we went through a vigorous advocacy planning process in February, and the top issue that this body believes that we can have a voice in and we can have an impact in working in collaboration with the Akron Public Schools Board and administration and the city of Akron is to make our community learning centers more accessible. Now, I know more than most about how difficult it is to pull together the JBR, the Joint Board of Review, and how critical they are in actually exploring this policy and making any change. When I sat as the president of the board and even chair of that committee, we faced so many roadblocks and roadblock after roadblock, and it was dismissed whenever we wanted to make actionable change, even just to put the review of the policy on the agenda, we received pushback. So what I wanted to share is now with a new mayor, with a new superintendent, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that we are primed in this community to actually address this challenge, to expand and access to our CLCs, to put community back into our learning centers, and making sure that the grassroots organizations in this community who have very little money, but a lot of sweat equity, a lot of hard work, a lot of partnership with our community and our youth, and uplifting them, that we actually invest in them and make sure that that insurance policy requirement is lifted. There's also a part of the policy that was written over 15 years ago where the city was to pay the district $10,000 a year. That has never happened. And so as a body, we're asking for some type of relief for the community to be able to use these buildings after hours without that undue harm. I'm joined by Willie Blake, who's also on our committee, who will share a little bit more about direct impact and information that our community has shared about their experience using the community learning centers. Thank you very much, and it's always good to be here with you.
Thank you. Next, we have Willie Blake.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Eugene Blake, an Akron resident and director of programming for a local music nonprofit. I hold 2 college degrees, a Central Great Lakes Regional Emmy Award nomination, and have spent years dedicated to uplifting our community, especially through educational and developmental opportunities. But my assignment to the congregation this evening today is to address the pressing challenges our community continues to face in accessing Akron Public Schools community learning centers. The CLCs were built with a dual purpose: educating students during school hours and providing space for community programs, meetings, and activities outside of those school hours. Yet and still, many in our community are unable to use these spaces due to significant and unnecessary barriers. For example, the insurance requirement for renting a CLC can be prohibitively expensive, particularly for grassroots organizations and community members operating on limited budgets. For reference, a $1 million event insurance policy from Novak costs about $425. This added expense makes CLCs less accessible and creates a disparity that feels particularly unfair for smaller community groups doing essential work. I'm personally dedicated to creating spaces for community engagement and community programming. The CLCs are designed for this exact purpose. But when nonprofits and neighborhood groups attempt to rent a space, we're often stopped before we even get started. The reservation process is confusing, unpredictable, and overly complex. Adding to this frustration, the administrative procedures document on the APS website governing this exact process has not even been updated since 2001. Back when I was still attending Portage Path and Dr. Small was still the APS superintendent. Here's what I fear. If we don't simplify this process, these centers that are built for the community will continue to sit underutilized. And the resources we all invested in will benefit only the few with the means to afford it. This gap hits our Black and disadvantaged communities the hardest, perpetuating the very inequities that CLCs are meant to alleviate. I urge the board to act by aligning policies for CLCs to favor simplicity and affordability. Let's eliminate the insurance requirement and streamline the reservation process so these spaces can serve their intended purpose. Akron residents need spaces for after-school programs, job trainings, health initiatives, and family workshops. And every barrier that stands in the way of this mission is a complete disservice to our community. In closing, I ask the board to work with the City Council, City of Akron, and Joint Board of Review to bring necessary changes to the CLC policies. Akron's families deserve full, equitable access to these facilities, and we're asking for your partnership to make that happen. With love and care from me, William Eugene Blake.
Thank you. Next, we are moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Autry, Vice President Jackson in her absence, board members, community members, staff. We have a few national days that are occurring this month, and literacy, family literacy, November the 1st, which schools are doing substantial things this month and next month around literacy. National School Psychology Week, November 11th through the 15th, and we certainly do thank our psychologists for the work that they do. We don't actually have enough of them, but the ones that we do have, they're stretching and getting the work done, and we appreciate that. Veterans Day on November the 11th, National STEAM Day on November the 8th, World Kindness Day, November 13th, National Education Support Professionals Day. That would be considered like our paraprofessionals, and we certainly appreciate the work that they're doing, and goodness, we need a whole lot more of them. So, Substitute Educators Day, November the 22nd, and we certainly appreciate them as well. Had an opportunity to speak with one on yesterday just in the grocery store, and had a long conversation. And Thanksgiving, which is November the 28th. We have some grants that we certainly are thankful. Ohio STEM Learning Network, Battelle STEM Innovation Network's grant for our teachers that was applied through Ms. Megan Mannion. We were awarded $5,000 each in funding for Helen Arnold, CLC, NSCLC, and 3 teachers at NIFSTEM High School for a total of $25,000. Advancing Good grant by Lundell Basil, the grant for Mr. York at STEM High School in the amount of $7,500 to explore aquaponics. Excited about seeing that actually come to our district. It yields a lot of great opportunities for students beyond what one would imagine. Reminder that we have our Cornerstone meetings in November. Cornerstone number 2 on November the 22nd at 4 o'clock, and then we have another meeting at 5. Cornerstone 1, Cultural Safety and Belonging. We have a Cornerstone 4, Family, Partners, and Community Engagement. Those meetings are on November the 19th at 3:30 and again at 5 o'clock. And Cornerstone 3, Operational Excellence on November the 21st at 5 o'clock, and Friday, November 22nd at 3:30. Shout out to Kraus CLC for being featured by the City of Akron for earning the GAR Foundation grant for the purchase of a book vending machine. Congratulations for Bookdale CLC, ECLC, and Firestone for qualifying for the state tournament for football playoffs. Just a reminder to our families as we enter into the cold season, if for some reason there is a closure, the principal will only be at the school in the morning, 7:30 to 8:30, but we will be doing robocalls, text messaging, news, websites, as many opportunities as we can to ensure that our families are communicated with regarding the school closures. Thank you to our staff who worked tirelessly for the state of the system. We had 2 addresses in the same day. Thank you to the Akron Press Club for the opportunity, and thank you as well for the opportunity to serve at Garfield on that evening. Prime Architectural Firm will be presenting the possible sketches for our buildings that are coming, and the overall process of the new buildings at either one of our committee meetings or at the last meeting in this month. But we will communicate that information out to let the families and public know when they can come and see the actual sketches. And these are just drafts, but just to let you know that those sketches are, that the process is moving forward. And for Be Kind 330. Bright Star Books is a nonprofit focused on increasing access to and ownership of books for limited resource children in the greater Akron area. They attended and provided books at open house at Glover CLC, as well as their family literacy night. They were also able to provide the librarians at Reimer CLC with enough books to distribute 5 books to each scholar, in addition to providing books for the book vending machine at Helen Arnold CLC. Bright Star Books has given out over 350,000 books to local students since they began in 2014. Thank you so much to Bright Star Books for showing what kindness means in our community and for supporting literacy in our schools. Thank you, President Autry. That completes my review.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Are there any questions for Dr. Robinson around his report? Dr. Molnar?
Thank you, Madam President. I actually have 2. The first question, the Cornerstone meeting dates that you mentioned, will you please add those invitations to the board calendar so that way we can have those on our calendars? Is my first question, just for those, the way we are invited for other events. And then the second question is about the, you mentioned sketches for, I'm guessing that's the Miller South Pfeiffer building. Is that the building that it sketches for?
Yes.
Okay. And I didn't know that there were sketches or we're getting to that phase. Is it just the outside of the building, or will there also be tentative plans for inside of the building? Has that been discussed or determined what the inside of the building will include?
These are just going to be as they are sketches, and it will be primarily the outside. They're also working with the staff and the community on the development of what the inside looks like. They have tentative sketches of those things, but as those conversations are had, and we're looking at what those wants are based on what we're able to actually provide, that will change, of course, some of the interior sketches of the buildings. And those, again, it is just an outside sketch to just let people know that those processes are moving forward. And through this process, it is going to change multiple times until we get to the final, what will be a final draft.
Follow-up? And so with the inside, I understand especially decorations and things like that will be later, but will we have a general idea of number of classrooms, or if there's an
Once
auditorium?
we get to the final draft, the final plans, yes, we will be able to tell you how many classrooms, what shared spaces they will have, and other things that where labs or those things may be in the buildings. But again, this is a very detailed, lengthy process, and so when we get to that point, then they'll be able to share what the final phase would actually look like.
Any other questions? I have more of a comment, because I did get a few emails from Miller South, because apparently when they had the last meeting around the new buildings, it was in conflict with a performance that was happening at Miller South. So I just wanted to make sure that the Miller South families are included or invited to future presentations. I guess they're feeling a little bit left out with the building being an actual Kenmore. I know a lot of the focus has been around Kenmore, so I just wanted to share that. as we're moving forward with that process to make sure that they're included. And I know they had a lot of questions about enhancing different things, and I don't think we would object to them raising funds, but they wanted to know specifically where we were at in the process. That might be a little bit getting ahead, but again, I just wanted to say it out loud. I know they named some other districts in their email, and I just wanted to remind them of those districts that they referenced in emails are districts that have one high school that they can focus on. Akron Public, I'm sure we're going to have a very beautiful building, and I think we would welcome any fundraising efforts towards these projects, but there was inquiry about what the district is actually doing so that we can ensure we match what they have, if not enhance it. So again, I just want to say that out loud on the mic, as Ms. Jackson says.
Yeah, we can also, we can always inquire with them. I do know that they have some meetings this week, but we can always inquire in terms of their availability and what's actually in the contract in terms of them having additional meetings. But I know that there were some community meetings that were had, not sure of the date that they had it in terms of the conflict of something else being on that same date. So, but we can check on that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our agenda is our Treasurer's Report, which is a presentation of our 5-year forecast. Dr. Thompson.
Madam President, members of the board, community, stand before you tonight to go over projected 5-year forecasts. We're going to look at 2 separate forecasts, one that is presuming or just straight as it is now without a levy passage, and then of course modeled with a levy passage. So at this point, what I hope to provide for you is an understanding of where we stand and how that links in with the last presentation, which was talking about variances primarily. But so there's a book put before you, or a little 3-ring notebook binder. You'll see it, tab 1 should help you or assist you in reading, understanding, digesting a 5-year forecast. So there's some explanation there. Types of levies, there are more types of levies than most people know, but it gives you a rundown of what those are, understanding how those school levies work and how they're funded, and then a section on House Bill 920, and one of our slides will clearly illustrate the impact of House Bill 920 and what it looks like graphed. What does that actually look like graphed? And you'll see that. And then we'll look at that 5-year forecast, levy passage, and levy failure modeled. So what this actual PowerPoint will include, first, high-level overview of those scenarios where we stand from a presumed financial situation. One thing I will say also, we had discussions at our last meeting about still reducing the budget for this fiscal year. That has not been completed, so that's not baked into this model, but it could be. So there's still, but it would have to be done fairly soon. We'll also compare, well, how does this November forecast look compared to what we presented in May? A review of those assumptions, and then a final summary. So I know this is a lot, and we're going to break it down a little bit. So the top section, what you see towards the top, what you see, I want you to focus on this top part, not the bottom part right now. The top part is what it looks like financially right now. And if you look across the top, that beginning balance in fiscal year 25, which we're in fiscal year 25 right now, you can see that we're projecting to end the year with $106 million. And then in 26, $68 million, almost $69 million. 27, $23 million. 28, we show a deficit of $32 million, and by 29, a $97 million deficit. That comes out more clearly when you look across here, which is your revenue. And you can see that revenue doesn't increase substantially, and in some respects it declines. That's based on vouchers. It's based on declining student enrollment. And then you can see, though, expenditures just continue to rise, which is not unusual. And I really need to emphasize that all school districts go into deficit spending. It's boom and bust cycles. Because of House Bill 920, which freezes revenue forever when a levy passes, all school districts eventually go into deficit spending. And on average in Ohio, school districts are on the ballot every 4 years for new money, and we've gone 12 years. So if you can see in fiscal year 27, we're in deficit spending of $37 million, then $45, $55, $65, and $85 million, meaning we're spending that much more than what we're bringing in. Of course, what that does is it eats into your cash reserves, which is across the top that we covered, and across the bottom, you can see where that leaves us. So that shows us in deficit by 2027, which would, as soon as I submit this forecast, will likely trigger ODU to contact us for fiscal caution.
Point of order, ma'am. Can we not use acronyms?
Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. Thank you. It's good to remind me. Thank you. So the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce is the determiner, or the watchdog, if you will, of schools that could potentially are at risk to go into deficit spending. You cannot go into deficit spending and run your own school district. So that's across the top, as you can see in November, which clearly illustrates the absolute need for levy passage. You go below, we're going down here now, we're looking at what happens if we pass this levy. So if we pass this levy this November, tomorrow, this November like it's far off, tomorrow, on January 1, we'll receive a half collection, meaning we'll collect the taxes from that increase of half the amount that we would normally get in a full fiscal year, because half the fiscal year is over. So that would be roughly about $15 million. You can see going across the top, we still close out fiscal year, we close out the fiscal year at 106, 81, 67, 38 million, and we don't, and then the beginning balance is a negative number in 29. But when you look at ending cash balance, you can see that we're good all the way up until fiscal year 28, which is on a school budget of over $400 million, $880,000 is a reasonable number to turn black for sure. The fourth number is a bit more of a challenge. So now what we're taking a look at up here on the top, this is our old forecast from May. So why does fiscal year 25 look like look over here? Why does it look so different? And the main reason is tying in on our last conversation about the variance of $20 million, and there's your number. So to break this down a little bit more, our current fiscal year projections, general fund revenue, we believe that we'll take in about $350 million. I am optimistic that that may be more, because we did and do have in our forecast declining student enrollment, when in fact this year we did not have declining student enrollment. How that juxtaposes against vouchers, I'm not sure. So this is kind of new territory, making me a little more unsettled on fully understanding what our revenue may end up being. But we will not know until student count. They did student count in October. We'll get those numbers soon. Projected general fund expenditures, we're at $388 million, and you can see that's a deficit that we looked at earlier of $37 million. That would take the ending cash balance down to $68 million. Board policy calls for us to have 2 months of cash reserve on hand at all time, which is about $62 million at this point. And we'll look at more what that looks like over the course of this as we work our way through this PowerPoint. So where does our money come from? We'll look at that first if we could focus on the pie chart. About 58% of our funding is state and federal funding, about 37% from local taxes, and then about 5% from other sources. So our projected local taxes are to bring in about $130 million. And you can see the breakdown from our real estate property taxes, which is the majority of it, and then public utilities. Our state funding, we project at $203 million. The Fair School Funding Plan, an additional $157 million. Restricted state funding at $33 million, which is exactly what it sounds like. And state share of our local taxes at $12 million. So projected all other revenue, and that's from grants, et cetera, at $15 million. So you can see how our revenue breaks down. When it comes to expenditures, personnel cost, and this really surprises a lot of people, that high percentage. Why does that mean that since we're spending over 80% of our money on people that we're overspending? No, that does not mean that. That's a number that you will see in pretty much every school district across the state. Why? Because we are a service industry. So the majority of our money, we don't manufacture anything, obviously. We don't sell anything. So that includes health care, retirement, workers' compensation, salaries, et cetera, et cetera. And that is the lion's share of our budget. And you can see the breakdown between what goes to salary and what goes to benefits. Purchase services are things that it's a variety of things, but it can be special ed placements. It's a long list of services that we can purchase, or items that fall under purchase services, and that's $37 million. And all other expenditures is another almost $37 million. That's debt, transfers, advances, supplies, et cetera. I know this is a busy slide. Bear with me on this one over here. Previously, I had mentioned, what does House Bill 920 look like when you put it on a chart? This is what it looks like. It's flat. I don't think anyone in this room could make an argument that if your revenue is flat, that you could somehow keep your expenditures flat. Simply couldn't do that. I think we all understand that. So while you see inflation, rising gas costs, et cetera, that you feel in your homes, we also feel that in our school tenfold. You heard Pastor Harrison talking about feeding 14,000 students and transporting 13,000 students. We do that every day. That isn't what we do in public education is expensive, but critically needed. And then if you look over to the right, you see our projected cash balance, and you can see it continually declining as it's graphed out. This is to the left, the chart here to the left tells a story. We have historically seen and historically projected at just below 2.75% annually an increase in revenue. Now we're projecting decreases to some degree. And where is that coming from? It's twofold. It's vouchers. It is our disadvantage as more and more schools, districts in Ohio qualify for DPIA money, which is our disadvantaged pupil fund. That money becomes less for school districts like ours that have historically captured a lot of money from there. So we're losing $10 million from that fund alone, even though our kids aren't, and our community's not any less in need of those funds, just simply stripped of those funds. And if you look to the right, our expenditures are increasing at a higher rate than they have historically. So cash on hand, remember we were looking for 60 days cash on hand, and you can see in 2026, we're down to 21 days of cash on hand. This is without a levy passage. This is modeled without a levy passage. So you can see approximately a levy would have to be passed in fiscal year 25 not to violate our own district policy as things stand currently. This is our per pupil general fund expenditures. And again, you can see it rises every year, but the student population that we serve is oftentimes in more need than some other student populations. Not all schools feed 13,000 kids. Not all schools feed 9,000 kids breakfast. Not all kids have the specific needs that our kids need. And when we take those funds away, we disenfranchise, as you've heard many times before, our students, particularly black and brown students, more than other students, but all students get disenfranchised to some degree when we cannot fund the programs that we need in order to support those students. So if you look to the left, our daily cost per pupil is $113. Every day you send your kid to school, that's what it costs us roughly. Every day you don't send your child to school, that's what we're spending. And to the right, our per pupil expenditure support, it shows you about where that all breaks down in terms of where does that money come from. So back to the forecast, we can be strong and stable with a levy passage. Those numbers tell you that. We have to be fiscally responsible. We have to be very cognizant of the programs and what we're doing, but you can see that we can do that with a levy passage. And I, quite frankly, when the first idea of a levy was born, I was pessimistic. And then a lady named Carla Jackson, a guy named Adam Motter, and a board member named Mrs. Sykes got deeply engaged, along with many others and many other people in this room and across this district. And the feel that I get, and I hope you all get, is one of optimism and hope. And I believe that we can pass this levy. And I think this data clearly illustrates the dire need for us to be successful. Questions?
Thank you. I would be remiss, I think you might have meant Dr. Carla Chapman.
Oh, did I say, I
just had to say that because.
Will you stand up, Carla? No, you have to. Come on. People think I'm taller than you. Look at that. This lady, single-handedly. We're not single-handedly, but thank you. Thank you, Madam President, for the correction.
Any questions, please, for Dr. Thompson? Member Hall.
I just have one quick question. Page 6, with the demographics, you stated that daily cost per pupil, per student, is $113. You said when they don't come to school,
Still paying it.
we're still, okay, so that doesn't mean that the state is giving like money per day for the kid?
No, that's just it broken down so you
Okay.
can digest it as, what's it cost to educate a student for a day? I thought it was just interesting data.
Understand, thank you. It is interesting. That's why I was like, wait, hold on, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Alexander.
Yeah, and just a comment. When we talk about that cash balance, and so people understand what the cash balance is, that cash balance is if we hit the bottom and we don't have any funds, that's so we have at least 2 months that the school district can stay open. So if we hit the bottom tomorrow, we got 2 months that the district will stay open. After that 2 months, we don't have any money, and so that's the whole purpose of having that cash balance there. So if something happens, we'd have that to operate the district. After 2 months, then we would be in deep trouble.
I mean, we're at just over $30 million a month to run this school district.
Thank you. Any other? Dr. Molnar?
Thank you, Madam President. The slide, I think it's the slide before this one. So we had fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 25. You said the difference between the numbers there is the variance.
We talked about at the last meeting.
At the last meeting, but we were going to be able to fix this variance at our last meeting?
Well, that's what I led with, or maybe I didn't make it very clear. We won't be able to erase, I'm not going to mislead you and think we're going to erase 20 million, but we're working on erasing some of it. I know Dr. Robinson's been working on that. We'll get that done, put that in. So when you see the forecast, which we'll hit on the Finance Committee meeting, a good one to attend is the 19th. We'll have this updated to reflect whatever it is that we can reduce. But this is what it is right now, without any reductions.
And so on the 19th, when we put the reductions in, there will still be, we'll be back to the one on top where 26, 27, 28, still a need for a levy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the cuts that we could make are the cuts not in that forecast, but the cuts in the variance of $20 million.
Madam Chair, and with respect to the forecast, I don't think we should be opining. We had a report, we had a committee. This is the 5-year forecast. And so we've received a forecast, and I don't think we should be opining on the what-ifs.
Thank you. Your point of order is taken.
Understood.
Any other questions? Member Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't so much have a question as I do a few comments I want to make about this. You know, we have been out at the polls for the last 3 weeks, and it's always a good opportunity to be there because you get a chance, an opportunity to talk to the actual voters and the citizens here in Akron. And And I truly enjoy it, because what I find out, and I'm constantly reminded of what a wonderful group of folks we have here in the city, the citizens, our taxpayers, how much not only do they support this community, but they support this school system in particular. And we have been, through the rain and the cold and the wind, we have been rejuvenated from the comments that we received from the public. One of the things that people understand, they understand that it has been 12 years. They understand that we need a new North High School. They understand that this will mean increase in taxes, but also know that the millage that we had 12 years ago was 7.9, and the millage that we ask now is 8.9. So we're just talking one millage, but the difference is, as the Treasurer said, is that we're looking at the fact that we were not able to show an increase because of the House bill that prevent us from showing any increases from when we passed it 12 years ago and taking advantage of that. Now that there has been some appraisals of property, so it will mean that the increases, the taxes will go up. But the community basically have told us they think that it's worth the investment. But this is the thing. This is the thing that my issue is that we did talk about reduction at the last meeting. We did talk about what could we do in our projection and in our forecasts to include those things that we could cut before we bring anything else to the community to show what the forecasting will be. But as I stand out at the poll and talk to the people, it seems as if we are dealing with two different systems. Individuals who don't seem to understand that we are all one in this, and that if we are going to be successful with this school system and making sure that we stay in the black, then we all got to be in on this. I sit here and I hear the counselors talk about the social work position that's being established. And I hear other people talk about the different things that they think should be happening. We're talking about Miller South, even though that's a different funding source. That's a COP, and that's not a part of what we're doing here, but we're going to have to pay for those teachers at the new Miller South School. We're going to have to pay for the support services. So this is all one big system, but we tend to separate it and act as if we're dealing with this is a problem over here, but this is us over here. So when you hear about 81% of where we're spending our monies with health care and retirement and work comp, then that's everybody, including unions. That's everybody. And when we make a decision what the unions will get, then that's not just the union, that's all employees. That's the me too, that's everybody. So if we're going to deal with this problem, then we all have to be in on it. It's not, this is your problem over here, and we're over here, and we're coming to tell you what you didn't do, how you have to do it, otherwise we may not vote for the levy. The issue is that if we don't vote for this levy, then we will not have a system that we will have social workers or teachers or administrators or support services, because it does take money, and we are constantly being reduced by vouchers. From the state of Ohio, money is constantly being taken out of our budget. Our children are finding themselves having needs that we have to address. And so I would say to you, first of all, that this proposal that we have tonight is one that is contingent upon the board's approval. And as a board member, I would not approve this proposal, because I don't think that we've shown the cuts that we could make. Because I am not willing to go back to the community to say, we have to do this without us showing that we understand that we're all in this together, and we all have to be a part of how can we balance this budget. Not some of us. Everything must be on the table, whether we pass the levy or not. Everything must be on the table, because this is the total system. It's not, this is your part over here and this is our part over here. You can't separate the two in order to have a successful system. And I can't go to the community and say, it's okay to vote for this because we need it, because it's for the kids. You know, I have to be able to go to the community and say, we have done the very best that we can do. We have made the cuts that we can make. We have considered everything that we need to consider. And now, this is where we are and we need your help. I have found that this community is overwhelmingly supportive when we do that, when we show that we understand what it means for them to pay their taxes, that we understand what it means for them, even if it's only 22 cents per day, even if it's only $37 per day, what it means for them to be able to pay and to take money out of their household to help our children. You know, I hear all kinds of things when we're standing out there. People who say, I don't have any children in the system. And I say, I don't either. But someone helped pay for my children when I did have children in the system. When you hear that it takes $113 a day for a child, there is no way any of us could pay the taxes that we need individually to educate our children. We all need the help. We all need help. Spending more than we are bringing in is not acceptable. Let's start there. Spending more than we are bringing in is not acceptable. It is not legal in the state of Ohio. That's what we mean when we say you cannot run a system in a deficit. It means we cannot spend more than we are bringing in, and we are clearly doing that. And at some point, we must stop it. We all must stop it. We can't continue to do this. We had COVID, we had additional monies come in, and we put off. We put off the levy. We cannot put these things off anymore. I can't say enough how important it is that we all understand that this is our school system. This is the same thing that I say when I talk to the taxpayers. This is our school system. So we all have to be in on this. But yet, I feel and I sense and I see and I hear and I smell and I taste, and all of my senses are out here in the community. And it says that there's this problem over here that you have, and then we're over here, and this has nothing to do with us. But that's not the case. All of this has to do with everybody, and we have to work together to find the answers. So on November 25th, we are required to pass some legislation on our 5-year budget forecast. So what we will have to do between this time and November 25th is come up with some new projections that we're going to bring into this board meeting. And I can only speak for myself. If it looks anything like this, I can't support it, because we have not shown that we understand the severity of where we are in this community with this school. And we cannot continue to spend more than what we are bringing in. And everything must be on the table. And the only thing that I bring to this school board, which I've said to these board members before, is my name and my reputation. And that is what's most important to me. So if I stand there and I say to a citizen, to a taxpayer, that if you vote for this, then I will assure you that we're doing the things that you expect us to do, that transparency is there, that we're spending the monies the way that we say that we are, and that we, all of us, the administrators, the unions, the support staff, everyone, security, everyone, that we are all working towards the same end. And that is to have a strong school system and to make sure that those 20,000 plus children are getting what they deserve. not to use our campaign slogan, but that's it. Dealing what they deserve, and that is the very best. That is the very best. But we can't do this splintered. We're all splintered. We are just separating ourselves. That's your problem, that's your problem, that's your problem. No, this is our problem. Our problem as a community. This is our problem. And I am begging all of us to please, let's work together to come up with a solution that we know we can find in order to balance this budget, to stop spending more than we are bringing in. And we may have to, it may be painful. But that is the only way I know we can do this. So come November 25th, which means between now and then, we're going to have to come up with some things. And this is nice and pretty and all of that, but this does not even begin to address the type of reductions that we need to make in order to go out to the community and say, we've done everything that we can, and now we're asking you to support this levy. We're doing that tomorrow. And there's no doubt that when we do this, we're going to have to get on a rotation of every 4 years at least, to go back to say we've done everything that we can. But that does not mean that the millage level has to be as high as we're projecting it now. Not if we make the necessary cuts, do the type of planning, management, and policies that we need to do in order to make the cuts that we need to do in order to say to the community that we understand you, we appreciate you, we know how much you have worked to make sure that we have wonderful schools, that our children are so deserving of a decent education, and that we're willing to work together to do this. This separation, this is your problem, it's not my problem, does not work, it never has, and never will work. The only way we can work this is by coming together, working together, and understand this is our community and these are our children.
Thank you, Member Sykes. Are there any other questions around the forecast? Okay. Thank you. President's report. I just wanted to remind my colleagues of the upcoming OSBA conference. Anyone that is planning on attending, maybe let's coordinate which workshops we're going to so that we can be strategic in the information that we are receiving. Also, I wanted to bring forth to my colleagues in our recent retreats, we talked about possibly restructuring our meetings. We talked about work sessions, and that would be a meeting in which we actually have the opportunity to go through the agenda and ask our questions, take our time going through that, and at the end of the work session, we would actually vote for those items to be on the agenda. And the point would be for the following meeting, having gone through that agenda in the work session, to maybe have more timely meetings. And so I know that's something we discussed, and if that's still the will of this board, I know the administration has been doing some backwards mapping, because that takes a lot of work to make sure that everyone gets their items in on time, because essentially we just be having one meeting in which we vote on the agenda, and then the following meeting to approve it. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If that's still the will of the board, we would have the opportunity to do that work session potentially at our December 9th meeting. But because we only have one meeting in December, it would be a need to have another meeting to actually vote on those items that we move forward from the work session. And so that is something Elise can poll the board, and if we have enough that are interested in that, then we can proceed moving forward with restructuring our meetings. So if there's any questions around that. Member Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I don't know if I have a question. Of course, I of course, have mentioned a number of times that I do think that we need to have more discussions on our agenda items before they actually get here, so that it doesn't become a committee meeting whereby we're finding ourselves asking a lot of questions that we should ask in committee. So you're calling this a work group?
It's a work session or committee of the whole, essentially.
Okay.
And we would, again, review the potential agenda items and ask our questions, discuss them. And then at the end of that work session, we would vote to say, we're moving these items for the agenda of the next meeting.
Madam President, I would be in total agreement with that, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? One of the potential repercussions of that is we would possibly have more special meetings in case there is something that would come up in between that, wasn't caught in the work session. So just also bringing that to your attention. That is a potential consequence of doing this. So just keeping that in mind as well. Reverend Harrison, did you have a comment?
Madam Chair, in looking at the agenda, and I know I have called you several times, I've called the board members several times, I think it would be helpful to make sure that the agenda items have went through the board's committees. And so if the agenda items go through the board's committee, the proper committee, whether it's legal contracts, whether it's finance, if it goes through the committee and we can look at the agenda and see that it was offered through this committee, I think that would help to make sure that I think we would have less questions, and then we would give the opportunity to the public to come and engage more. There's some item agendas that we've heard today that now I have questions on that I didn't have questions because the answers that I got don't seem to fit what I heard during public comment. So I think if we could make sure that items that are designated through a committee actually go through the committees, that we can have further or more robust conversations through the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And so my understanding is that items would still come through committee, but the full agenda would be at that committee of a whole. Is that correct, Superintendent?
Yes. So presentations and those kind of things would go through the committee meetings. But at the committee of the whole is when the board would go through the agenda and vote to move things to the actual agenda. That would be at the actual board meeting. So you would be able to determine if an item moves forward, if that's the pleasure of the board, or if you wanted to go back for some reason where we may need to do something else with that item before it comes back to the agenda.
Reverend Harrison.
And I would say, again, if it goes through the committee, because I don't want to do the board president and the superintendent's job, and so I know that's your job to set the agenda. But, and maybe I'm not understanding that we're going to have a meeting for the agenda, but I guess I'm saying if the subject, whatever the subject is, if it goes through the proper committee, then the agenda is set because we've discussed it in committee. But to have a meeting to find out what goes on the agenda, I'm comfortable with the rules as the superintendent and the board president sets the agenda. I'm just saying that the issues, whatever it is, should have went through the committee. If it goes through in the proper format through the committee, then I think it would be appropriate to be on the agenda. So I'm not sure if I got lost in there.
No, my understanding is that it would still come through committee, but because everyone doesn't attend the committee meetings, the work session would be the opportunity for the full board to see the proposed agenda as a whole. So it would still come through the committee, but then the committee as a whole would have the work session to further discuss, any items. And again, because not everyone comes to every committee meeting, it's an opportunity, just another opportunity for discussion and to get questions answered. Mr. Alexander?
Madam President, I'm looking at our schedule, the calendar actually, and I know that we have a training session on the 7th, I believe. Would that be a good time, since the person's going to be there, to help us work through that during that time? So we know, because you're looking at the schedule, if we're talking about the second Monday in December, that's the 9th. Then you talk about the 4th, that's the 23rd. You got to remember holidays and so forth around that time as well as Thanksgiving. So that might be a time that we want to talk with her if we need to, or start discussing ourselves now. Then we have questions for them to try to help walk us through it. Then we can walk through it at that time. But I don't think we're going to get those sessions in December.
Okay, so the December 9th meeting, I think, is potentially ready for the process, if we're willing to do that. If not, then we might not be able to start it till next year. So
yeah, if we're going to be ready, I think it's okay. But if we're going to push it just to get it done, we want to make sure our ducks are in order. So let's make sure they're in order before we start this process.
Okay. So we'll see who's available for the second meeting, and because we're already scheduled for December the 9th, and if it's the board's will, then we can proceed that way. If not,
right. So we're going to have that means we'll have a meeting on the 23rd, right?
Well, we can put some dates out there. It doesn't have to be the 23rd, but the point of it would make that meeting where we actually vote much shorter, because we've already been through the committee discussion and then the work session discussion.
Right.
Not that we couldn't ask questions still, but there should maybe be less, since we've gone through committee and then had the work session. So that meeting where we actually vote could be potentially short.
Right.
Shorter than usual. So we'll put a poll out and we'll see where it lands.
I just want to make sure too, because that is, like I said, around the holidays. We got people who might be going out of town. Kids got on vacation for Christmas break. Some people may be going, so we got to take that in consideration as well.
Thank you. Okay. So the next item on the agenda are committee reports, legal contracts and board policy. Dr. Molnar.
Thank you, Madam President. The legal committee met October 28th. One thing to note, we got our semi-annual 48 Neola updates. So we have 6 months to go through those. So we will have 2 more meetings this year. We decided November 19th and December 16th after the Finance Committee meeting. We will have 2 more legal committee meetings. On November 19th, we will have 1 item for a first read, policy 8510 wellness, and 6 items in discussion. 3 of those are the most pressing Neola updates. 5,200 attendance for House Bill 214, 5780 technology rights related to Senate Bill 29, 6460 vendor relations related to Senate Bill 29. And then most of the other Neola updates will come to us maybe in the December meeting or even after, since we have a few months, but we're going to get to them. Also for discussion, we're going to have policy 9510, school visitors. We had a discussion on that during our legal committee meeting. This is related to the implementation of the Raptor system that we approved in February. And the administration sent information to families on October 28 and explained that everything is set up, it's ready to train staff in schools, but there were still many questions during committee related to the system, like what types of records would be flagged by the system, what type of behaviors staff members would take when an individual is flagged. So that item, 9510, will remain in discussion, and then we will have 2 new items to discussion. One of them to acknowledge your president's report and the student comment on, instead of just moving on to the next piece of news, listening to students and community asking how we are keeping our schools safe. We're going to have a presentation on our restorative practices to let people know we're here, we're listening, and this is what we are doing so far. So there will be a presentation on restorative practices and also discussion on policy 5511, 11, which is our dress code that we paused in the beginning of the year, and we said that we would come back for that in January. I know that families right now are making decisions, holiday shopping and things like that, that might affect or might be affected by a dress code. So the start of the discussion for dress code.
Thank you, Dr. Molnar. Are there any questions for Legal Contracts and Board Policy Committee? Thank you. Next, Finance and Capital Management Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Finance and Capital Management met at October 22nd, and we basically, again, went over projections for the 5-year forecast and just had what I thought was a good conversation, a good beginning of a conversation that we will continue to work on. We are scheduled to meet again on November 19th at 4:30 in this board meeting room.
Thank you. Next, Instructional Policy and Student Achievement. Member Hall.
Hello. So we did not have a meeting. Our next meeting will be on November 18th.
Thank you. Equity Committee. Mr. Alexander.
We have no report. Our next meeting is December the 10th at 5:30 in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to item 9.1, which is approval of our previous meeting minutes. We will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our regular board meeting on October 21st, 2024. Is there a motion?
So move.
It's been moved by Member Harrison. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Alexander. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Reverend Harrison.
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mrs. Sykes.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Next is our personnel recommendations. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Archery. I wish to recommend the approval of the personnel recommendations presented in Category 10 through 20. If I might be able to...
Can you speak in your mic?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I wish to recommend the approval of the personnel recommendations presented in Categories 10 through 20. I wanted to know if I may approach for 11.2 on the social worker position. I'm going to ask Keith to come up because that's a position that is for a particular school out of their Title I funds.
Good evening, Dr. Robinson and the board. So I can answer some questions, but essentially this is APS Online. This position's for APS Online, and they received a non-competitive Title I grant for a supplement. It's called a Supplemental School Improvement Grant. So they received $120,000 for this school year. So these funds must be expended this school year or we return them back to the federal government. There are several allowable uses for funds. So some of the things that they're working on, they're planning some professional development and conferences for the staff. They have some money set aside for a speaker. They've set aside money for math tutoring for their students and some supplies, but the bulk of what they were doing was around family engagement and whole child support. So one of the allowable uses is to fund new positions. So this is supplemental, so it's extra, and that's where the team started looking at how can we work with our staff and the principal and the counselor to bring more of the community and the supports to our kids and families.
Thank you. So, did you have a question, Reverend Harrison?
I have a question on, Madam President. On that 11.2, when we talk about allowable expenses, would that not, how will we pay for this tutor after this year?
So in this case, this social worker position, if they do not receive this grant again, because next year it will be competitive, it was non-competitive, meaning just the status of their state report card guaranteed them this $120,000. This year we'll be writing for a competitive grant. Should they qualify, they could continue that position. Should they not receive that grant in the next year, we would have to eliminate this position.
So is this not subject to a bargaining agreement?
No.
Okay. I guess I want to understand that.
Area. I'm sorry, it's sort of a gray, but I can let Yamini Atkins come up.
Yes, members of the board, I'm Yamini Atkins. To answer your question, this position is a non-union position. It is not in the bargaining contract. Just to, based on earlier comments, no positions have been replaced or displaced based on this social work position. As Keith pointed out, this is a position for the APS online. It is a grant-funded position. When the grant goes away, and there's no funding available, the position goes away. So this is not subject to union negotiations. We have had a grievance filed, and not to get into those details, but in this forum, however, we did meet and discuss the matter with the union. We've provided extensive responses, so it's in that stage.
Thank you. Do you have an additional question, Reverend Harrison?
Not on 11-2.
Okay. Did you have a question, member?
Excuse me, Ms.
Member
Atkins,
Hall.
quick question. So this person will not be receiving any benefits of such, correct?
Does it? I think
Because
it's
the contract?
No, this is nothing to do with the contract. This is a separate non-union position. It is covered through a grant. They would get the benefits of the grant as during the period that they're here, which I think includes benefits, but that's how they're paid through that grant.
Okay.
It doesn't affect the general fund.
Because just to piggyback off of Pastor Harrison, if it was a contract within the agreement within our unions, that teacher, social worker will then, once this agreement is gone, then their job is gone too, correct? So, because once this funding is gone, then it's just gone. So we don't have any extra funding to pay.
Right.
Once the contract is up, correct?
You mean the grant?
Once the grant is over,
yes,
right.
Then
Right.
yes, unless there's something that happens. At this point, that is not the expectation. But if, like Keith indicated, if they qualify for more funding, then it could continue. But it is a grant-funded position.
Right, and that's an if we qualify next time.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. Did you have a question about this item?
Well, I guess I have a point of order. We've been discussing committees a lot lately. This seems to be a topic that has a lot of questions, even emerging and budding questions. And we have committee meetings, November 18th and November 19th. All 4 committees will be meeting before November 25th, which would be our next meeting, where we would have the timeline for this to be approved. So we have not done the part where we are officially in discussion. I don't know if this is where I can even make a motion to move this to committee, but this feels like the most appropriate thing to do with this item. Can I motion to move to a committee?
So I was allowing the superintendent to have the floor to explain that. So you're right, it has not been motioned or seconded for discussion. So we can entertain that motion now for personnel recommendations. So is there a motion to accept the personnel recommendations?
I would motion to move 11-2 to committee.
Okay, so we have to get it on the floor first,
Okay.
and then discuss it, and then I think we can make the motion. Is that? No, we hadn't. So we need a motion and a second to get it on the floor for discussion. We were discussing that particular position before we got to discussion.
Point of order.
Yes.
So we were discussing it, but we didn't make, the motion is to put the personnel recommendations on the floor.
Yes.
Okay. So I make a motion that we, well, I can't make a motion to move his personnel recommendations on the floor because we don't agree with all of the motions. So
So once it's on the floor for discussion, I think at that point we would be able to entertain a secondary motion to move the item to committee. Is that correct?
Madam President, I believe that what has to transpire, since it's on the consent agenda, that it is removed from the consent agenda.
This is personnel. It's not consent.
Oh, it's not consent, but we're putting it all under one. It needs to be taken off individually and placed on here individually, and then the board can vote. And a no vote doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to hire the position at some point, but it could mean that you just want to send it to committee. But it needs to be removed and at least tabled.
So that means we have to put personnel recommendations on the floor for discussion and then entertain a motion, a secondary motion to move that item.
Correct.
If that's the will, to committee.
okay, I motion that we entertain personnel recommendations 10 through 20.
So it's been moved by Member Harrison. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Member Hall. Now we can discuss.
So can I do the discussion?
Now it's discussion.
Will motion to move 11.2 to committee, remove it from the agenda and discuss it in committee.
So the secondary motion is for item 11.2 to be moved to committee for further discussion and off of personnel tonight. Is there a second?
I would ask for an amendment to that motion, 11.2, 10.3, and 10.4 to be removed from the motion.
Can you repeat those, please?
11.2, 10.3, 10.4.
I will second that motion.
So items 10.3, 10.4, and 11.2.
Discussion.
It's been moved to move those to committee and seconded. Is there discussion on that motion? Member Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just simply ask, by moving it to committee, what I see one is a math teacher, a replacement for a math teacher.
Yes, the other one is a paraprofessional.
So my question is, I suspect that we need a math teacher as soon as possible. So what kind of problems would that cause if we move that over to committee? And then my second question on the social worker, if in fact this is not coming out of general funds and this is a grant, then are we moving it so that we can find out from the unions their concerns, more of their concerns? Why are we? Because if this is in fact what the administration has said, that this is a grant, this is a one-year grant, and that it is not a position that's under the union's agreement, then for what purpose are we holding this up, and what purpose are we holding the math teacher up?
I have that same question, because we're holding up a math teacher we need, and we're holding up this assignment for this council. When you really, it's a grant fund. If there's no money there for the position, then it's not there. The only way that position will remain there if there's another grant that will allow it to stay there, and so it's not going to be in the general fund. It's going to be through a grant. So I'm not understanding why we're taking those off either.
Yeah, Reverend Harrison.
The math teacher, let me address the 10.3 and 10.4. Those positions I asked to remove so we can discuss those individually. The information that I got from asking about the math, I know that there is a school that has not had a math teacher. And so the information asking that, is this math teacher going to that school? I want to discuss that to make sure that this teacher is going to a school that does not have a math teacher. I think this is the discussion that we should be having in committees to make sure, and I guess I would say if I take the time during the week to ask questions to ensure that we do have equity, then the answer that I get is what I'm going to go with. The 11.2, my concerns with 11.2 is if we are absorbing positions, I continue to hear that this position, if we have to fund this position, if they're receiving school benefits, is the totality of the grant paying for that? But I want to make sure that we are not supplanting positions. And I want to make sure, I asked about 11.2 today as well. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding, and I want to make sure that I'm getting the correct information when I ask a question during the week. Because if I hear something different, again, I've been on the other side. If I hear something different, I want to make sure that my vote is in support of what I'm being told.
Right. So, Member Harrison, in regards to the math teacher, is your question about if that position is going to a particular school, or you just want it moved to committee?
No, I wanted it off. We're doing it in a consent format. So I wanted to talk about that position on the floor. Is this teacher going to Bookto High School? That's it.
Superintendent, can you answer that question?
Yes.
Yes.
Pastor Harrison, yes.
Okay.
But we're voting on, the board is voting on the hiring of a teacher. And then not specifically that they're going to a particular school, but I can tell you, yes, the teacher is going there. The reason we don't do that is because when we bring the position, that means that if something happened a year, 2, 3, 5, 10, they could transfer if they so choose to. But this position, yes, is going to fill a position at that school.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we have information as a board. If we get information that a school does not have a teacher, then I'm not going to approve the hiring of a teacher to go somewhere else if it's not going to that school that needs a teacher.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
That's on 10.
10.3?
10.4.
10.4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then 10.3 is,
So then 10.3, I know you mentioned that as well. Is that?
They both were math. They both were math teachers, so I withdraw my amendment.
Okay. So the secondary motion is still on the floor for item 11.2 to be removed and sent to committee.
just to piggyback off of Mrs. Sykes said, it makes sense. You know, if it's not, if it's a grant, the grant is paying for it. It's not coming out of general funds. We're not paying benefits for this person. It's strictly grant, and once the grant is up, that position is up.
Yeah.
So I would probably be more so in support of that.
Thank you. You have additional information
Well,
for
just
us?
to be clear, the grant will completely cover the salary, fringes, and benefits. So this position would get benefits. It's a full-time position, but all under the grant. And so when the grant funds expire, that position would expire, or we would have to come back to the board with such a request. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Just to
Member
follow
Hall?
up. Even though, yes, you said it is paying for benefits, but it's coming out of that grant money.
Correct.
So it's
100%
not
of it
coming
is
out of
coming
any
out of the
general funds.
Yeah. And anytime we're splitting funding, you would see that on the board recommendation. So this is 100% grant-funded supplemental school.
Thank you. So what's still on the floor is that item 11.2, because it was motioned and seconded. So now we're discussing that secondary motion, if we want to remove it or keep it. So is there any other discussion about that secondary motion? Dr. Molnar.
Yes, so I still would like to have this in committee. All 4 of our committees will be meeting before the next board meeting. And so as we talk about moving items through a committee, a lot of the purpose of moving items through a committee is so we don't have the pressure of receiving just the information that we can think of in the 5 minutes that we're here before we draw out the meeting. So having items come through a committee, I don't think I've ever had a personnel recommendation come through a committee. Honestly, I'm not sure which committee it would go through, but since all 4 of our committees are going to be meeting on the 18th and 19th, I am willing to open up space on my committee if that is the will of the board of which committee for it to go through. But it seems like there is information that we don't have that we could have about some personnel recommendations, and that is one of the primary reasons why I would like to move this item to committee.
So on the floor is 11.2. If we are going to remove it and add it to committee or not. Is there any other discussion around that secondary motion? Member Hall.
Thank you. I just kind of think back to why some parts of why we're in a lot of debt that we're in is because of with the COVID money, we established positions and then kept the positions and then moved the positions over to general fund instead of eliminating those positions once that grant money was over. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not, arguing about it or anything like that, and I totally get it. But we also have to make sure that once a grant is done with, we need to let that position go. Unless we're getting more grant money. We can't keep funneling things through general fund because the grant is over. So I just don't want to keep getting into these issues or financial issues and then going back saying, hey, we need another levy because, we're continuing to overspend. So that's all I just wanted to say was it seems like history is kind of starting to repeat itself again.
Thank you. Mrs. Atkins, do you have additional information?
Yes, to address this. When we post our positions, one thing that we have changed and do is to make sure that for grant-funded positions, we clearly indicate that on the posting, that these are grant-funded positions and that there is no expectation that it will continue, unless there's further funding provided or there's something that changes in the work setting after the grant is completed. So the individual is aware of that. So, that is something that we're well aware of and make sure everyone understands front.
Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, you've been recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I don't think the question is where does the funding source come from? I don't think that's the question. The question is is it supplanting? So what you cannot do is take a union position, something that the union holds, and I'm not saying they do or they don't. I don't know enough, but you can't.
Point of order. The question on the floor becomes, do we move it? That's
yes.
Okay. And so if we're going to talk about it, then we can talk about it in committee if it gets there. If not, then we'll proceed. But the question on the floor is, do we move it to committee or not?
Thank you. Your point has been taken. And we're going to move on and call the question at this time around item 11.2. We've discussed it, and now we will take a roll call after discussion on removing 11.2 and moving it to committee. That's what's on the floor right now. Roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Was it a second?
Mr. Alexander.
No.
Mrs. Sykes.
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Reverend Harrison.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
No.
Ms. Autry.
No.
Well, that's interesting. Motion is deadlocked at 3-3.
It fails.
Well, the board presidents voted. So.
So what's the parliamentary procedure for a vote by vote?
Usually it's the president that breaks the tie.
because we have an odd-numbered board. That's why boards are odd-numbered. But since tonight,
The motion failed.
yeah, you can't, the motion, yes, the motion fails because it requires a majority, so it fails. You're
So
right. Motion
it
fails.
fails.
So it stays on, you're voting on it
Yes.
tonight.
So now we're at the primary motion, discussions around the personnel recommendations. Is there any discussions about the other personnel items? Dr. Molnar.
Since 11.2 is on the floor, I suppose this would be the time to have discussion on 11.2 then? So I have questions on 11.2 that I would have reserved for committee, but I have now here.
What is your question?
So the first question is, this is a grant-funded position, and this does appear to be some sort of legal situation. We don't have any attorneys here. We can't ask the attorneys for legal advice. So I will just generally ask, because it seems to be a conflict, do we have any grant-funded positions that are currently in a union, since that seems to be the issue? Are any grant-funded positions in the union, or because it's grant funded, is that why they cannot do that? Is that the confusion? It seemed to be a funding question.
Just to generally answer that, I mean, and I don't know if this is really the forum for, but in any event, there are positions that are within union contracts throughout the district. Some of them are funded through general funds, some of them are funded through grant funding. So there are union positions, grant-funded positions within union bargaining unit contracts.
And so I apologize, because I completely agree with you, this is not the forum or the place for this, but this is where it stands. And so I guess, does the legal challenge of this, does the funding source affect the legal challenge to it? Because I would not like to participate in something that, I mean, here we are. Tomorrow, we are asking
You have a
our
question, Dr.
taxpayers.
Molnar,
Yes,
about
I do.
11.2.
I
Please
do.
ask it.
Tomorrow, we are asking taxpayers to vote for levy.
This is about
We are
11.2,
promising-
not
yes,
tomorrow.
we are promising that we will do the very best that we can do. We have considered everything that we consider. We had passionate comments that we aren't overlooking, we aren't ignoring, and the community needs to see that we are asking and
ask Dr. Molnar your question, please.
So I guess because we don't have an attorney, it is very difficult for me to come up with a question, because this has all happened right now, because it's not in committee. But I will say, my question is, legally, does the funding source matter? Because the funding source the fact that it's grant funded appears to be the situation. So legally, does the funding source matter?
No.
Are there any other discussion questions? Member Sykes?
Madam Chair, excuse me, let me just say that I voted for this to go to committee because I see that the effective date for the position is not until 12/02/24. And so we can meet in committee with it, and there has been some questions brought up by the union. And I think that, again, if we're all in this together, and if there is something, for some reason they feel that this is an issue, this is a problem, it seems like having more discussion on it to try to clear that would be a reasonable solution for all parties. So that's why I voted to send it to committee. So my question would be, I'm sorry I'm taking a long time, Madam Chair, to get to the question. Would this cause a problem for this position since it's not scheduled to start until 12/02? This person is not scheduled to vote. Is this the one that's scheduled to start on 12/02? So what is the problem with it being discussed more in the committee? That's all
I guess I will just make a statement, and there's some things happening here that are a little out of order. The treasurer talking about a union matter is completely out of order. I don't know how that happened. But I'm going to say that we have a process. We have contracts here with this district, and we have a process to follow to address issues. And there's a process that the union must follow when they want to air their grievances, and a process we have to follow to address those grievances. That has been happening. That is happening. What we're bringing to you is not really related to that grievance issue. That is a matter that we are working through, that we have provided response to, and we have a position on, and that is how we will proceed. But this is a grant-funded position, and I answered the question that these are positions that are some that are in, there are many grant-funded positions that are in contracts, some are not in contracts. That does not affect the position in terms of the grievance. So that is a separate matter from what we're here for today. So I just want to make that statement, if there's any confusion as to about what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, call a
Reverend
question.
Harrison. Yes. So we're actually in discussion about personnel. Item 11.2 was the item, but I actually had just a quick discussion about a different item. And actually, it was just more of a comment before we called a question, which I definitely agree with. I just wanted to acknowledge the retirement of Mr. Brian Turner from Bookville High School, someone I've had the pleasure of working with for many, many years. He is a true jewel of a educator over there at Bookville. He's been in other positions within the district, but he's amazing. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Gates Millennium Scholarship, this is a scholarship that is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates that funds a child's education all the way up through their doctorate degree. And Mr. Turner was instrumental in making sure that, I believe it's 3 scholars from Bookville have received those scholarships. And I would say that he is largely responsible, of course, the students as well, but for making that happen for our students. He was he was largely involved with the PTA. He's done just many amazing things. He's also just a good example that many of our young people need to see. One of my favorite words he uses all the time is expeditiously. Anybody who knows Mr. Turner knows he uses that all the time. So I just wanted to thank him for all of his service to our students over many, many years and to enjoy a well-deserved retirement. And with that, we will call the question to personnel recommendations. Dr. Thompson.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Reverend Harrison.
No on 11.2. Abstain from 13. Yes on the balance.
Abstain on 13. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. Yes, 13.
Thank you, Reverend Harrison.
13-1.
13-1. Thank you. Dr. Molnar.
No on 11.2, yes on the balance.
Mrs. Sykes.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Abstain from 12.2.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Okay, so we do the math here quickly. We are 4-2 pass on 11.2. We have 5-0 on 13.1, 5-0 on 12.2, and 6-0 on the balance. Make sense?
Thank you.
2 abstentions on 13.1, or 1 on 13.1, 1 on 12.2, and 2 noes on 11.2. But all passes.
Thank you. Next is our consent agenda. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Autry. I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in Category 25. They're in proper format, and I move for their approval, please.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Alexander. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Dr. Molnar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Reverend Harrison.
Yes.
Dr. Molinar.
Yes.
Mrs. Sykes.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
I abstain, 25.1 yes on everything else.
25.1. We are 6-0 on everything except 25.1, and we're 5-1, or 5-0 with an abstention.
Thank you. And next is our business affairs recommendations. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Autry. I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in category 27, please.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve our business affairs recommendations?
I make a motion to approve the business affairs.
It's been moved by Member Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Molnar. Is there any discussion around business affairs?
Yes, discussion.
Reverend Harrison.
On 27.2, want to just kind of point out again, when we talk about state funding, when we talk about public schools that have to support either private schools or charter schools, I think this is a good example. Even though it is an excellent program, it is funded by us for the use of a private school. And I certainly don't have an issue with private schools other than the fact that they take money from public schools. But I just want to acknowledge that this is why it's important for us to support the levy and our tax base, because we simply need money for these type of programs in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. You said that was item 27.2?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that pass-through funds, or is that's not our money, correct?
No, this is actually their money.
Mr.
But we are the fiscal agent for them. So
We still have to account for it.
yeah, we still have to, yes, sir, we do. We have to account for it.
Yep, so we manage about $2 million of Title I funds for our non-public schools. And so we sit with those administrators and do what we call a program design and decide how to best support the students that leave us and go to them.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion around business affairs? Member Sykes?
Yes, right. So we use our staff, not our staff time and expertise. And that's a significant cost, their time and their expertise. So I just want to just note the 27.3, the East Side Jersey dairy here. So is it that East Side Jersey purchased Smith Foods? Is that what happened on that? And because it's like it would start out as $1 million, and then this is a contract that that will go. Then it's $915 million, and we're buying milk and juice. So again, it's just another way of pointing out how we spend our money. Milk and juice, of course, we want our children to have milk and juice, but this is another expenditure, and it's significant. And so this contract also is a additional contract in 25 that goes in 27, and there may be an increase of 1 to 5% in the next year. But just again, just a note of how we're spending our monies and where our money goes, and we certainly think it's for a cause that we want to, that we support, but it's just that $1 million is a lot of money for milk and juice. It's a lot of money. Also, just the 27.8, this is a 10-year contract, and so since the last time this board talked about it was 10 years ago, so I just want to bring it up again. I know, again, this is a necessary management council of the Ohio Education Computer Network that we use, and we absolutely use it, and it does not come out of our account, right? Is that correct? But I just think, again, 10-year contract, We never have any discussion about it, just to show, again, these are the kind of things that our administrators are working with every day. And then finally, let me just ask about 27.9, the Tidewater Staffing Solutions. So this is helping with our payroll and account personnel. So we contract this out with someone to do because we don't have the staff, or it's cheap? What's?
Yeah.
I know we have people that are on leave right now that we cannot hire to replace them. So we need to be able to do payroll, and so we are going to need the support to keep payroll going while we have a couple of staff members out in the treasurer's office.
And this is for the entire system. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So
to do payroll for the entire system.
And just for what length of time? What length of time?
It's going to be determined on when the employees are going to come back from leave, but we know it's going to be a long stay. We just don't know if it's going to go into next school year. I'm sorry.
Okay, so, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So this is not to exceed 150,000?
Correct.
And so the contract is open? We don't know how long?
It's going to be depend on the number of days and hours that we utilize the people from the staffing agency.
This was because the importance of the payroll position and the role. An individual was recently changed to a different department. They are short-staffed there, so there was an urgency to fill the position. Dr. Thompson had indicated that he needed to have a position right away, pending us filling it in a permanent way. It's a replacement of someone who'll be leaving, so we are utilizing this just for a short period of time. I don't think it should be. One of the issues is that we have to wait for the city of Akron, because some of these positions are done through the city of Akron, and there's an eligibility list for this type of position. So that takes a little time to get those lists together so that we can, so waiting for that, and then we'll be able to determine where we'll move from there.
It's a civil service
the civil service position.
So we don't necessarily, and we're down by 2. And
Thank
one is
you.
on leave, so.
So, yeah, it's a Band-Aid for a short time.
We would have to use the temporary agency, just temporarily.
Any other questions on business affairs? Member Hall?
Thank you, Madam President. 27.3, the Eastside Jersey Dairy. Have we looked at multiple companies to supply milk and juice, or are we just picking this company because they're local?
We'll have Ms. Folk answer that.
Good evening. Regarding Eastside Jersey, this actually was a bid put out last year, and Smith Dairy won the bid for multiple years. Consolidation, unfortunately, in the dairy industry is happening nationwide, and Eastside Jersey is the one who recently bought Smith Foods, but it will still be the local Orville location that will provide the actual production of milk in this local area. It will still come through Smith Foods. It's just the fact that we're giving you a name of a new vendor, because in order to pay for the milk we're already contracted for, we need to make sure the purchase order goes to Eastside Jersey. So this was a change of just a vendor due to consolidation. Just FYI, across the country, you're now down to 2,400 dairies nationwide to provide all the milk provided to national school lunch and breakfast programs. So we are seeing this consolidation continue to go forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we already are in contract.
Yes.
For last year.
Yeah,
With Smith, we're
and-
switching the name. So you're just giving us this information because it's a name change.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions around business affairs? Seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Sykes,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
I abstain from 27.9, yes to everything else.
Reverend Harrison,
Yes. Motion carries 6-0 and 5-0 on 27.9.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander.
Yes, I want to go back. I have a correction. I made a mistake. It was my oversight. The Equity Committee is meeting on 11/18 at 5:30. So that's November 18th at 5:30. That's my oversight. So I want everyone to know that. It wasn't nobody else's fault. It was mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So we have no unfinished business. I see no new business before us, but there is a need to recess into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22G3 for the purpose of conferencing with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of pending or imminent court action. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
It's been moved by Member Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Molnar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mrs. Sykes.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Reverend Harrison.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We are in recess to executive session at 7:59.